right? People are thinking that, oh, we're making just so much more if we can get them to go thousands of dollars higher. It really, in the grand scheme of things, does not equate to that large of a difference, right? I have a wife, I have a mortgage, I got 3 kids. They all like to eat snacks. Trust me, I would have to basically screw over a lot of people and give a ton of terrible advice time and time and time again for it to even equal half of a transaction, right? When you're talking about numbers or differences in a commission split that are that small or that low in the grand scheme of things. Welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into a reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We offer expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. In this week's episode, we'll be posing the question, is your realtor really looking out for you? Do they really, truly, and honestly have your best interests at heart? Whether they ever mention it or not, this is a question that's often in the thoughts and concerns of many buyers who are out there. And I often see a lot of discourse going around on the internet, that everybody has an opinion, right? And so I will usually pay attention to see what the general sentiments are, what the general public is saying on particular topics. And there were a couple of different things that reminded me of a story that had happened in my real estate career. So for example, I was watching a show that was on a podcast, and they were basically giving the advice that you shouldn't really listen to your realtor when it comes to figuring out what you need to offer, what you need to pay for a home, because the realtor's commission is often tied to the purchase price. And so the realtor, by default, they're saying, would want you to pay more for the house so that their paycheck is going to be bigger, that their commission is bigger. Is that true? Theoretically, yes, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. I also saw a separate post. This was on the Nextdoor app where another stranger, someone that I didn't know or had met before, they were having a conversation about realtors, and someone was complaining about a house that had been overpriced. And they said these greedy realtors, they're just trying to bump up these prices so they can increase their commissions. And a lot of people were sounding in agreement. And one person said, yeah, that's one thing they're always trying to do, is they're always trying to bump up those prices so they can get more money for their commissions. And so I really felt like this was something that I needed to address, because it reminded me of a comment that had been made several years ago when I was working with a buyer client, and how that comment kind of stuck with me, because I know, again, they may not ever say it to the realtor themselves, but a lot of buyers are thinking that exact same thought. And so I wanted to kind of walk you through the process of, one, how we get paid, how that typically works out, and helping you to figure out, like I said, if your realtor is really in your corner, or how you can tell that in many cases. So several years ago, I was helping a single lady purchase a home. This was her first home. Her dad was a real estate investor, right? So he was very experienced with buying homes, had bought properties numerous times over, and he wanted to kind of come along with her and help and look at the houses. And so whenever we had a showing or anything, he would always tag along. Completely fine with that. That happens all the time. I have no problem whatsoever with parents and stuff like that. But and he was a great guy too. I actually went on to work with him as well in another deal too. And so I don't want it to seem like I was pushing against that or didn't really want that. Completely fine. It happens all the time. But we were looking at houses, and we had been looking at different homes. Like I said, this was several years ago. So the market at that time was hot. It wasn't anything like what it was in 2021, but it was still very much a competitive market in our area, one where you were often running into multiple offers. And she was looking in an area where that was very much going to be the case, right? We knew whatever home she purchased, there was likely going to be at least 1 or 2 other buyers who were interested in that home. So we're touring a home. This had been early on in the process, so she hadn't really made many offers or anything at all on any properties. And so she's walking through the house. She really likes it, and she starts talking about seriously considering making an offer on this home. And she was, of course, asking me, what are your thoughts? What do you think we should offer on this house? What do you think it's worth? So I'm kind of walking her through that, and I'd done some research on the neighborhood, and I told her, I said, hey, based on what's been happening in the area with these particular types of homes and in this particular subdivision, I'm thinking that you're going to need to offer, if you want to be competitive, you're going to need to offer at least $10,000 over the list price for this particular home. And her dad was kind of like in the background, and he just said, under his breath somewhat, but still very much loud enough for all to hear, and joking in a sense, but he was saying, oh yeah, of course he wants you to offer 10K over. That means he just gets more money in his pocket. That really didn't sit well with me, but I knew, like I said, he was joking, so I didn't want to spend time addressing that and stuff too. But again, I understand that is something that is on the thought and concern for many buyers that are out there, right? If you are getting paid, or if we have an agreement in place saying that the realtor gets a certain percentage of the purchase price, then obviously by default, the higher the price, the higher the commission goes. And so there's a lot of people who have that concern. But it really bothered me because I knew that was not the case. I was truly and honestly giving her information that I felt would put her in the best position to get that home. And I thought a little bit deeper about it too. And I even went back in my records and I looked up the price of that home. I looked what they were offering to the buyer's agent in that particular situation. I said, let me just run the numbers so I can really have something concrete that I can show people to see how big of a difference it really makes in those types of situations, right? And so she, in that particular example for that home, she was looking more at making an offer that was right at list price. So I believe it was like at $225,000 is what it was listed at. That's what she wanted to offer, and she really didn't want to go above that price, right? She felt that was a fair offer. That's what they're asking. I can give them right about that. I don't want to go above that. That's what she wanted to offer, right? And so I looked up what my commission would have been if she had purchased it for the price that she wanted. And then I also calculated what my commission would increase by, or how much it would change if she paid the $10,000 over the list price, right? And so first of all, right out of the gate, if you're just looking at overall gross numbers, right, the overall commission amount before commission splits, before any fees that I paid in my brokerage or my company, before tax, before any of that comes out, what is the overall number that my commission would increase if she were to pay that $10,000 over? It would equate to a $240 difference in my overall net commission for a $10,000 price, right? So again, if she pays $10,000 more for that house, that equates to $240 in gross commission that it would increase. Now, remember that also, if I was working with a bigger company, I wasn't off on my own. I was working with a bigger agency, and so I have to pay commission splits and fees with my brokerage company. I have to pay for errors and omissions insurance. And so when you factor in all of those additional costs, then my commission would have only risen by $158. And that's before taxes, right? So now don't get me wrong. I'm not going to turn my nose up at $158. I'm not saying that that's meaningless money, but if I'm willing to risk giving up my character or tarnishing my integrity in a transaction or a deal over $150, then you would have to question whether or not I had any character or integrity to even begin with, right? The point I try to drive home to people is that it's not making the difference in overall commission that you believe it is, right? People are thinking that, oh, we're making just so much more if we can get them to go thousands of dollars higher. It really, in the grand scheme of things, does not equate to that large of a difference, right? I have a wife, I have a mortgage, I got 3 kids. They all like to eat snacks. Trust me, I would have to basically screw over a lot of people and give a ton of terrible advice time and time and time again for it to even equal half of a transaction, right? When you're talking about numbers or differences in a commission split that are that small or that low in the grand scheme of things, it really would not make sense for us to go through the process of giving our buyer or giving our client bad advice to help them, right? And so that's one thing that I always try to drive home, is just letting people know and understand that is not always the case. Now, are there going to be some people in the business who are shady, who do have ill intentions, who are just trying to get every dollar they can squeeze out of a deal? Absolutely. That's going to be always the case. No matter what industry you're in, any type of sales, there's always going to be people out there who are like that. But the overwhelming majority of realtors out there are truly and honestly looking out for your best interest. And when they give you advice on what they think you need to offer, is not coming from a place of, oh, what's going to get me the highest commission? It's coming from a place of, oh, what is going to actually get them that house, right? So let's say, for example, even after that explanation and after all of that is kind of talked through, let's say you're still feeling uncertain, right? You're still like, I don't really know, Derek. I just don't trust salespeople, and I just don't think that you guys are being really upfront with your intentions behind telling us to offer what we offer on a particular house. Even then, I would still say that there are safeguards in the deal that can help to make sure that that isn't the case. One of which being the appraisal. If you're getting a mortgage, you're going to be required to have an appraisal done on that home, right? The lender is going to require you to order a certified licensed appraiser to come out, visit that home, and they're going to look around. They're going to measure the property, look at all the updates, look at the surrounding sales, and then they're going to determine what they believe that that house is actually worth, right? And so if they determine that that house isn't worth what you paid for it, they're not going to sign off on that price. They're going to say, hey, buyer, you can either pay the difference in this shortfall out of pocket, you can ask the seller to come down on their price, or this deal's not happening, right? So that's what's in place to make sure that you aren't overspending on the home. Now, granted, that's always just one person's opinion. The market is going to be the true dictator of what a home is actually worth. But if you're really concerned about, oh my goodness, like I'm scared I'm going to pay too much for this house, there's always other safeguards in place, right? The appraisers are in place mainly to protect the bank's investment if they're going to loan you all this money, but they can also indirectly help you in the process by making sure that you're not paying more for that home than what it's worth. Or if you are, you know that well in advance, right? So that is a safeguard that is in place to make sure that that home is actually worth it, right? And anytime I help a buyer write up an offer, I'm always doing my version or a realtor's version of an appraisal, which is basically called a comparative market analysis, a CMA. I do that to kind of help them determine, hey, here's what the home is worth. If you want to offer more, you want to offer less, here's an idea of it. But I always do it from the mindset of what is an appraiser going to say that home is worth, or what is the actual market value for that home based on what is happening in the area. I'm not doing it based on, at no point in that process am I saying, oh, well, it's actually worth this, but I want them to offer this because that means my commission is going to be a little bit higher. That is not going to be the case because, again, I know there are going to be further issues later on in the transaction, or could be with the appraisal, if I make advice or recommendations based solely on that. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that realtors, we have a incredibly competitive industry, right? I've said it before. For 80% of the people that enter this industry are gone within the first 5 years. It is something where people jump in and out all the time. And I truly believe that part of that reason is because a lot of people think that it's easy money, right? They think it's just, you just put a sign in the yard or show a house and you just collect these checks and go on about your business. And they realize, or quickly realize, that that is not the case at all. One thing that we need to survive in this business is we need repeat clients and we need referrals. If we're making a standard practice of going out there and always looking out for our own commission and not our client's best interest, it is not going to be long at all before we are found out and people do not work with us a second time. They do not refer their other clients to work with us, right? I want people who are going to use me for years to come. I want people who are always going to think about me first whenever they're looking to buy or to sell. And if I'm giving information that is not best for my client, that is going to very quickly become apparent, and I'm not going to be able to survive in this business a long time, right? And so you have to look at that as well and look to see, how long has your realtor been in the business? Do they have a good reputation? Do they have good reviews? Were they referred to you by someone else? If they were, that likely means that there's someone who's doing a good job, who's looking out for their client's best interests. Those are all things you need to be looking at. But like, our survival is literally based on us doing a good job for that, so that we can be referred and that those people will call us when they're looking to sell their homes as well. From the listings perspective or the listing side of things, when you go to list a home, that's another situation where, again, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, the realtor's commission is tied to the purchase price, right? It's often a percentage of the purchase price. And so again, the higher the home sells, the more likely the commission is to go up as well. There are some flat fee services out there, but the majority of them are based on what the purchase price is. Again, we're trying to do this with the mindset of what is best for our client. When it comes to selling a home or determining what is going to sell a home quickly, it always comes down to one of two things: price or condition. And if you really want to look at it, you might as well just say it always comes down to price. Because even if the condition is poor, if you lower the price enough, somebody will buy it. Somebody will be interested in it. So like those are always, pricing a home is very important when you're on the listing side of things. And one thing no realtor wants is for their sign or their for sale marker that they have in that yard to just be flapping in the wind for months on end as it just sits on the market longer and longer and longer. If we overprice a home, we know based on experience that house is just going to sit on the market and it's going to be who knows how long before we finally find someone to come along and just offer something to help get that off the market. The agent doesn't get paid unless that deal closes. Right? So if we have our sign sitting in the yard for 6 months and then that house doesn't close and they fire us as their agent, we walk away with nothing, right? So it does not benefit us to price or list a home way more than what it's worth, because we know that house is not going to sell. There's no amount of upgrades. There's no amount of photos. There's no amount of staging. There's nothing you can do to make an overpriced home sell. Right? That is one of the key factors and one of the most important things to do. Now, once you have the pricing right, then that's when all the other factors come into play, right? What does the staging look like? What is the condition of the home? Did you make sure that you had all the photos, the videography, and all those things in place? All those things are what help draw people in. But if that price is off, they're not even going to entertain it. Buyers aren't even going to look at that house. They're not going to set up showings. They're not going to do anything with that house if it is overpriced. And so it does not benefit us as the realtor at all for us to try to sell that house for way more or list that house for way more than what it's worth. If anything, more times than not, we will try to make sure that the seller didn't do that or we will turn down business because we don't want to go into a situation where we know that house is overpriced. I've learned the hard way, right? I've gone into situations thinking like, okay, I know the house isn't worth this, but this is what the seller wants. And so I'll just do it. And then once it doesn't sell, they'll see clearly we need to reduce the price, and then that I'll be able to stick and get with the deal. But that's not always a guarantee. There are some times where the seller's stubborn and they don't want to come down on the price any further, and then you're looking like a person who didn't know what you're doing. You're looking like the quote unquote greedy realtor in that situation. And so there's a lot of times where I've had to turn away business because I felt that the sellers had unrealistic expectations of what they can get for that home and price. And so even from the listing side of things, you have to be very careful of that. And most realtors, even though we know there's a higher commission for the higher price, we also understand that we just can't go out there and just slap any price that we want on it and try to increase our money, because ultimately it's going to hurt both ourselves and it's going to hurt our seller clients. So all in all, it always comes back to that experience and making sure that you are working with a realtor who has a reputation of looking out for their clients. If they've been in the business for longer than 5 years, I highly doubt that they've just been out here just acting poorly and screwing people over and all that stuff too, because again, the studies show that they would have left the business by now. It would have been very clear up front that this person does not have the best interest of their client at heart, and the market, the industry will very quickly boot them out. We're too competitive of an industry for someone who is just blatantly out here overpricing homes or advising their clients to offer way more than what it's worth. There's way too many agents out here for someone like that to truly be successful. And so keep that in mind as you're looking out there, as you're trying to figure out what's going on. More times than not, I can guarantee you your realtor is truly looking out for what is best for you, because we know that if you succeed, we succeed as well. I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next week.